So I have loved being at the events, and I can't remember how many I've been to. I know for sure the last two, and it's usually just me sitting with a group of women. Some of them I know, and some of them I don't know. And it's been very inspiring listening to the women on stage and just admiring, knowing some of their work, but not knowing some of their work and some of their inner feelings about things that have driven them in their life. It's been very inspirational to me to be a participant, and now to be, totally honored to be asked to be up on stage on the panel. I just can't tell you. I was like, when Deb called me, I was like, really? I was totally surprised and honored, and with such a great group of women as well.
Benefits to ladies in general. I thought it was an excellent opportunity to give back to the community. The charities, the organizations that's involved in this process are doing a magnificent job in supporting those individuals who will probably not get the support that they need, including financial support otherwise than from events such as this. So when I was asked to participate, I was definitely ready to do whatever I could to support the program.
Because life is never constant. So you've got to have the long-term goal and stay focused on that. And all of the short-term goals should lead to that one big long-term goal. But you can't be rigid, because life's not rigid, and it's great at throwing you limits at the worst possible time, right? And so I think that's one of those things where it's like a financial plan. You can't just do it once and then put it away in the drawer and never look at it again. You have to look at it as your life changes, as things in your life change. You have to go and adjust the goals. You may have to put some on hold.
For me, yoga was the place where I started to actually take care of myself. And I realized when I started practicing yoga that if I could create a strong foundation for myself, then I had more time for everybody else in my life. And then luckily, I transformed it into what I do for a living, but I still practice 4 or 5 days a week, because that's what keeps me grounded. And it actually is what keeps me able to do what I do, which is be a leader to the other people that are teachers and people that work in my studio.
Not everyone, their heart is not necessarily in the right place, but clearly from this event we learn where people's hearts are.
Knowing that you are helping someone else in the community.
And then can build on that regarding everything healthy for our community, yes.
Good morning. I am really excited to be here, and it is a pleasure to be the moderator, and I have got some phenomenal women who you'll hear how they are trailblazers in exactly what they do. So this is a little bit about them. I want to give you some instructions on what we're going to do. I'm going to start off asking some questions, but I really want this to be interactive. So we're going to have a microphone, and if you raise your hand, you can ask a question. You can also do it on Facebook, and it is United Way of Coastal Empire, and you just have to like it, and you can do your questions. Another piece, if we don't reach you, we still want to answer your questions, so they've agreed to stay afterward for a little bit, or we'll go on Facebook and answer your questions. So what I'd really love to see is some feedback from y'all. I think, y'all have the questions. And one of the things I find interesting, these women are trailblazers, and maybe the older generation can understand when they say, I was the only female in this era, but I think our younger women, they open the doors. So, and I would say one of the things to keep in mind is maybe they can give you an incentive to open a door that wasn't open. So, I'm going to start off with Kay. I'm going to start off with you first. All right. Now, you started off as a line teller in the banking business. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
All right. So, and I know this sounds a little trite, but if you could go back with your older self, what would you tell your younger self?
I think that there's probably 3 things I would say. The first one is to find something that's your passion. Find something that you really, really like to do. And I did that for a very long time and loved it. So
now, when you went in banking, is that what you thought you wanted to do, or did you wind up in the job, or how did it go?
Actually, my mother always said that it was the perfect job for me because they paid me to run my mouth all day long. So
now, when you were a line teller, and back in the day, was anybody in the, I guess, in investments or anything, were they female?
No. When I started at the bank, the only female jobs available were secretaries and tellers. And as a matter of fact, just to put it in perspective, as Meg said, when I became pregnant with my first child, they made me work in the vault because I could not be seen because I was PG. Now, I know that tells y'all how old I am, But literally, once I began to show, I could not be in the public eye. That was their big deal back then.
Okay, all right.
So looking back, I would say that, we have to remember, I would have told myself that you are setting a legacy for those coming behind you, and keep that in mind every step you take. Don't do something that could impact someone that comes after you and could stop them from being able to move forward in their career. So that would be one thing. Finding your passion is the other. And then I would say that the third thing had to be just enjoying what you did every day. And it never felt like a burden when you got up. I never had the Sunday night stomach turmoil until probably 2009. So I had
And then you had it full on.
and then I had it for a lot of years after that. But for a 41-year career, when you figure that only about 5 of those had the stomach turn on the Sunday night, that's a pretty good odd.
Okay, all right, thank you. Chief Tolbert. Yes. So when you started in law enforcement, you were one of very few. And I know you and I talked about it, that there was a certain way you were treated when you responded to a call. Tell me, if you can, tell them about how the men treated you as a female law enforcement officer.
Wow.
Now, we have a male officer here, so you better close your ears.
Okay, so it was in 1981. Like Meg said, there were very few females on the department at the time, and you got to keep in mind that this is a male-oriented organization, paramilitary, and so the men always felt that they were much better at this job than the females were, and didn't particularly want females on the job. However, some of us did join. Whenever we would respond to calls, if the call was something that the males felt was going to require some physical exertion, like fighting with someone, tackling someone, responding to a domestic violence type case where you were going to have to pull one partner aside, they would definitely rather have another male support them and back them as opposed to a female. So what the males would end up doing is they would, when the call would come out, they had the codes that they would work with each other on, and they would disregard the female officers. The dispatcher, of course, got wind of what they were doing, and she would try to intervene and cancel their disregard, but it didn't always work because the men knew when that call came through as a disregard what that meant. And that meant it was time for another male to respond to the call. And so the females would respond, and the males would basically dominate and take control of the call. And so we had to really prove ourselves when responding to calls for services with the men. And again, keep in mind that I'm speaking about 1980, 1981 or so. Today it's definitely different. The men welcome the females on the department, and we get along quite well. However,
But how did you change that? I mean, what did you have to do to prove yourself?
Well, actually, for me particularly, I was involved in an armed robbery situation, and this was actually the 3rd armed robbery of the day. This individual robbed a cab driver, and it was 2 of them. Many of you in this room may and may not remember Garden Homes on the east side of Savannah. So my partner, I actually ended up with a partner that day, and normally I did not ride with a partner. I was riding solo at that time, but I had a partner in the car with me, and he was male. We saw these 2 gentlemen as the call came out, armed robbery of a cab driver in Garden Homes, and we were just patrolling through Garden Homes at the time. Saw these 2 gentlemen cross our path, and I pointed these men out to my driver, my partner. We stopped the car, jumped out of the car, and just immediately began chasing. Well, what was strange to me is that my partner, who was about 6 feet tall, decided to chase the shorter guy. And he was about my height. And I didn't think that was fair at all. However, we didn't have time to think about it. We just had to respond. The end results is I ended up capturing the individual who was about 6 feet tall after he shot at me. He shot at me several times, and of course, I did not shoot back because
You thought you were 10 feet tall and bulletproof, huh?
well, could have been, but what happened is there were kids playing on the basketball court, and I definitely did not want to hit one of those kids with my bullet. So I did not shoot back. However, I was able to manipulate myself around to apprehending him. So I caught up with him and was able to subdue him. From that point on, Meg, I think I gained a little bit of respect from the guys.
So you had street cred with the other officers at that point?
Yes, I think so.
Thank you, Chief. All right, Kate, you were over in California. Can you tell them what you were doing and how you ended in corporate world to yoga? That's huge, huge different world.
All right, so I actually got into the field that I was in because I wanted to save the world. It was resource management and specifically GIS, which was mapping technology. And I loved what I did. I have a master's degree in geography, and it was my passion for the longest time. But eventually, it became basically about managing software and managing people, managing software engineers. If anybody's ever worked with them, they know that's like herding cats, as they say in the industry. So it was something that I loved to do, but it transformed into something that was different than what I had originally intended. And it was really stressful. Software industry, like a lot of the jobs that you may be involved in, is intense, 60 hours a week. High expectations, long hours. So I started practicing yoga to help manage some of that. And it was a side thing. I'd practice once a week.
Were you the only, you were managing men and women, is that correct?
Mostly men.
And how do you handle that? I mean, did they respect you right off the bat? How did you earn their respect? What were the hard problems?
Yeah.
If you could answer all that.
When I first started in the software part of what I did, I was a programmer.
Okay.
So I wrote code too, just like my software engineers. So I was able to get their respect because I knew how to ask the right questions. But it got to a point where I was always in management, and I started to lose their respect because I wasn't treating them with respect either. It was challenging to manage schedules and budgets, and then also have compassion for the things that they were dealing with on a day-to-day basis.
Because you've got an output, you've got something that needs to be done, but they're people as well.
Yeah. So it was challenging. And yoga was my way of dealing with that.
And all of a sudden you started a business. I mean, that's pretty scary. I'm going to quit my job and go for yoga.
Yeah. When I quit my job, I didn't know I was going to start my yoga business.
Okay.
I knew I was going to do a lot of yoga to figure out what I was going to do next, which I really, when I quit, at the time I was married and I had a good support system. So I was fortunate in that way. But I still didn't know what I was going to do, and I didn't want to take the thing that I loved the most and ruin it by making it my career. I had fear around that. But the more I did it, the more I realized that I really had a passion for sharing this thing that had changed my life, and I wanted to get that message out to as many people as I could. And specifically for me, practicing 3 to 5 times a week was the only way that it made a difference in my life, and I wanted to create a place where people could do that. So I started my business to be able to help people understand the power of this thing that I love so much.
Okay, thank you. Paula, you started, how long, you worked with FedEx? Yes. You started out at the bottom and worked your way up.
Yes, I sure did. So I started out as a part-time courier /
Any other females
driver.
with you at that time?
I was the first female to be hired in Houston, Texas as a FedEx courier at the time.
So did the men load your boxes for you?
They did not.
They did not.
And here's, Meg, I found this out later, but when I became a manager, but in some of those early days, that one of my, that the men that were the couriers along with me, they actually had taken bets on how long I would last. Not if I would, but when I would be gone. And so clearly, 25 years later, when I took my own time to leave, it was a good thing. But what they didn't know at the time was that I grew up on a dairy farm where I was working 24/7, 365. I was behind the hay baler and I could catch 100-pound bales and stack them up. And so FedEx was really pretty easy at the end of the day.
And who would you say was your mentor during that time?
So many of you know the very successful FedEx story. My friend Ellen, she calls it FredEx, just because, you know, Fred Smith was the founder. He's still the CEO. But Fred founded the company on the whole philosophy of people, service, profit, and all leaders, anyone that became a leader at FedEx had to go through this whole process where we actually talked about the 9 leadership dimensions. And I'm not going to name all 9 of them here, but some of them are very obvious: integrity, respect for others, dependability, judgment, individual consideration, courage, all of those. And so that was how he founded the company, and that's how we then became leaders. And so that has added value to my life since. So I've been retired from FedEx now 12 years, and I was there 25 years. And I carry on that same philosophy, not only in my own business, but also now with Healthy Savannah.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? I've got tons more. I just want to reach out if anybody has a question. If not, I'm going to just keep on going. Yes, we do. And we have some via Facebook, so, and Scott is doing that, and he's going to read that. If you could, Scott.
This is a question from State Jen. Recently, the New York Fire Department lowered its physical standards for women. What do you think of that?
So did all of y'all hear that? Recently, the fire department lowered its physical standards for women. The New York Fire Department lowered their standards for women, or just in general? Just for women. What do y'all think of that? I might start with the chief.
Well, actually,
You can reach
wow.
up just a little bit, chief.
Sorry. I think to qualify that question, you would have to ask the reason why they did that. And it may very well be because they do not have that many females that apply for the position because of the physical requirements for the job. However, with the physical requirements, hopefully the females that they do hire will be able to carry the load that's necessary. And that load consists of heavy equipment, being able to actually hold the fire hose, which is extremely heavy when you have water pumping through that hose. So to respond to that question, you would really have to know why they did that. But I would hope that they did it knowing what was necessary for the position.
And Paula, I'll ask you, I mean, when you came on, your job was to lift boxes. They didn't lower that standard for you, did they?
No, we were equal. Men, women, nothing was different at all. So we had to be able to lift at the time it was 50-pound boxes, and then it moved up to 70-pound boxes without any assistance. So, but of course we were taught how to do that safely and well, but no, we were expected to be equal.
Okay, all right. Kay, we were speaking, I guess was it last week or earlier this week, about when you entered in very few females in the banking industry. And this was a kind of a frank question. Did you use your femininity to help you in your job?
Absolutely. That would be a foolish thing to tell you no. I think that we have to use the tools that God gave us. And so in my case, when I was much younger, frankly, I use those tools because if it was me and a, guy calling on a client, I probably had a lot better chance of getting an appointment with that client than that burly old guy did. Now, let me take that a step further because I say that and you laugh, but you have to have something after that. So if you play on that part that's your strength to get in the door, you've got to be able to hold your own once you get in.
Right. And to maybe follow up on that, we also discussed, did you ever see sexism?
Oh gosh, for a lot of you, you may not realize this, but I was probably the only female around for a lot of times. And during that part, you had to, this is going to sound crazy, but you had to try to fit in so that when they told that sort of off-color joke, if you went, oh, and you ran away, you were immediately just dissed. That was it. It was over. I took golf lessons because back in those days, the guys all left on Wednesday afternoon to play golf, and I got tired of being the only one left behind to have to do all the work and answer all the questions. So I took golf lessons, and one day they said, okay, we're going out to play. We'll see you later. This was before cell phones or pagers, so when they left, you couldn't get in touch with them. And I said, well, I've got my clubs in the car. I'm going to come too. Well, all of a sudden, their little foursome now had a fifthsome, and that meant one of the guys had to stay behind.
And it wasn't you.
And it wasn't me.
There
No,
you go.
It was
there
not
you go.
me.
Thank you. So, Kate, tell us, I mean, you do not look like a hammer. You're very, very petite. So how'd you get the nickname the Hammer?
Well, when I worked in a man's world, I felt like I had to be tough. A lot of times as the only woman in the room, I felt like I had to be able to hold my weight and carry my weight the same way they did. And I think also when I was younger and I was less certain of myself, I thought that also was a good shield to kind of hide the vulnerability that I might have been feeling. And so I came across, like accountability is still important to me and rigor is still really important to me. But as I've aged and also moving more into a woman's world, I feel like compassion is a really important part of how I manage people now and how I interact with people.
So we have, you know, some young females out here. I mean, can you be the hammer and have compassion at the same time? Do they exist in the same world, do you think?
I think they do. So anybody that still works with me in my community at Savannah Power Yoga knows that accountability is really, really important to me. It's actually our number one core value at my business. And integrity.
And when you say accountability, what do you mean? I mean,
I hold people to pretty high standards, and I expect them to meet those standards if they agree to them. So, I mean, even simple things like teaching yoga, you got to be there, you got to be on time, you got to end on time. And I give my staff feedback all the time around making sure that those quality marks and the way we run our business is maintained.
And you have 3 parts. You had told me, I believe, that for people who work for you. What are the 3 things that you
Yeah, we give feedback a lot at our studio. And the way we do it is 3 things. Keep doing this, stop doing this, and start doing this. Really simple and mostly positive.
Sure.
I mean, the stops are meant to be constructive too, but mostly around you're doing great things and not forgetting to tell people and acknowledge people for the good things that they do as well as the things they need to improve with.
Okay, thank you. Paula, so you retired and then you didn't retire. How did that work? You moved to Savannah, you redid an antique house, is that correct? Or a Victorian house?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
and then how did you end up in this world? I mean, did you have connections or what happened?
I retired from FedEx after 25 years, and I have a partner of not quite that long, 18 years, and we, for the first time in our lives, had the opportunity to move anywhere we wanted. And, you know, Mayor, you'll be happy to know that we picked Savannah because of what really Savannah is, and I think I don't need to really elaborate on that. It's really just, it's a great place. I mean, I could tell you the other story is part of my FedEx time was in New Orleans. I love New Orleans, love, love, love it. Terry grew up, or was in Florida, and she loves Florida, so this was a nice mix between the two.
It's much better than both.
Yes, yes. So then it was like, okay, so 25 years at FedEx, but I didn't want to stop working. You know, I just have all this energy. Those that know me, I have a lot of energy. And so what I want to do with that, so I looked around for something else to do. And so I just, a friend of mine had a similar business model of a wound care clinic where you treat chronic non-healing wounds, a lot of diabetics, pressure ulcers, those kinds of things. And I said, okay, and I'm a believer that I can do anything that I want to do. Whatever, you just go figure it out, and that's what you do. And so I just set myself on a course, created a business plan, and the business plan, it was a good business plan. So there was an opportunity to not only take care of people, but also in an area that they really, really needed it, but then also the opportunity to have a profitable business. So I did that, and we just celebrated 10 years in April of the wound care clinic. It's been going very well, and we've healed a lot of people. Thank you so much. I have a lot of success stories there, but many of you know that really where my heart is with Healthy Savannah.
I'm not kidding. She had a fit when she found out I drank Red Bull. So
I did.
She's really lives the life.
I did. So, but truly, in 1976, literally, so this was before I even started for FedEx, I read this book, and I actually have it with me because I'm going to give it to Meg later. I already told her I was going to bring it to her to give, but it's called Sugar Blues. So back then, we already knew in the early 70s that sugar was poison. So I'm just going to tell y'all that again today. So if whatever ways you can pull sugar out of your diet, Meg, here you go.
Yes,
here's your book.
And she just broke she dissed your day.
There you go. Thank you. You're welcome.
All right, and
So Healthy Savannah, so I've been talking health 101 to a lot of people for a very long time, and then when someone came to me and said, we're going to do this thing. Mayor Otis Johnson then started it. I'm like, oh, how cool is this? There's more than one person that really wants to talk about health and have a healthy options for everybody. So that has been truly, that's my passion. It always has been, even at FedEx. People know me too. They would ask me about, all kinds of stuff. And so I really, anyway, Healthy Savannah so the wound care clinic is running very well on its own. I still participate, but as you know, that when I'm out and about in the world, I'm really particularly promoting a healthier Savannah for everyone, regardless of age, zip code, income level, for everybody. We want the healthy choice to be the easy choice for everybody. We don't just want the folks in this room. Thank you for supporting United Way, but we've got communities here in Savannah that really absolutely need to have a safe sidewalk to walk on to get to the park, to get to the grocery store. They need to be able to go to the grocery store and get fresh food. This is what we need. And so those are the things that we promote all the time. And I'm so proud to be part of Healthy Savannah.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think we have a question, Scott, on Facebook.
This is from Megan Piper White. For women in our community interested in mentoring and making a difference in the lives of our at-risk youth, where do you recommend that we start?
Anybody want to pick that one up? Chief?
With the police department.
You got to say that a little louder.
I think we definitely, I was just kidding just now when I said with the police department, but really we have volunteer programs with the agency, and we need all the support and the help that we can get to help mentor young people in this community. We are actually, in my opinion, faced with a crisis with our young people. Anytime we have hundreds of youth being incarcerated, it's a problem. And so wherever we can get the support to get individuals willing to mentor, that would be outstanding, not just for the police department, but also for the city at large.
Okay. And just a plug right there to let whoever Megan is, there's a program called Intercept located at the hospital, and it works with at-risk youth, and they are looking for mentors. So if that is what you want to do, we would welcome it, and I have the information afterward if anybody is interested. All right, so I'm going to go back to you, Chief, and then I'm taking it. Chief, can you tell us what you do for relaxation in your spare time? And I don't think she has a lot of spare time in the last year, because you realize she did take over in a rough time. You had to become the chief of police, and I'm sure that was really easy and relaxing during that time.
Very much so. I enjoyed it.
So she told me this the other day, and I kind of laughed. What do you do for relaxation?
Actually, my first enjoyment is lawn care.
She likes to mow the lawn.
I love mowing the lawn.
She gets in a fight with her husband if he mows the lawn before she gets home.
I do.
I thought that was hysterical.
Yes. I would rather cut the grass than have him cut the grass. In my opinion, he doesn't cut it right. So I told Meg that I really enjoy being outdoors, just walking through the neighborhood, enjoying God's creation, but I love planting flowers and just lawn care. I really do. I enjoy that. That's my first form of relaxation. And of course, I mentioned that I love listening to easy gospel music.
Now, she likes the old stuff, not the new stuff.
Yes, not the new stuff. I like the old stuff. I like the Shirley Caesars and the Mahalia Jackson type of music. It's very calming and very relaxing, and it just puts me in a different state of mind when I'm listening to that type of music.
Now, Kate, somebody who does yoga all the time, what do you do to relax?
I do more yoga.
You do more yoga. This is a woman after my own heart, I'm telling you.
I actually, I spend a lot of time with my dog.
Oh, do you? Okay.
Yeah, I love my dog.
What kind of a dog?
He's a German short-haired pointer, and he needs a lot of exercise. So we spend a lot of time at the dog park.
All right. Kay, what do you do for relaxation?
Because I was so focused on my career, unfortunately, I did miss a lot with my daughters as they grew up. So now my focus is on my grandchildren. I have 6, and 5 of them are in Savannah, and I spend as much time as I can with them. And there's no better way than to put away the cares than to go listen to them for a couple of hours.
All right, so let me ask you, we're all working, most of us are working mothers. How did you deal with the guilt that you want to succeed in your work, and that means you got to put 110, but you have kids at home, and you want to be the best mother. Did you ever feel like you failed, and did you feel guilt?
You feel like you fail on both fronts, because you can't win. You're guilty when you're at work because you should be with them, and you're guilty somewhat when you're with them because you think about what needs to be done at work. So it's just, I think it's a constant battle that all of us who are mothers and have careers face. One thing I will say that's a little different in my era, we didn't have all of the social media and we did not have cell phones. So when we left work, we were pretty disconnected unless they called you on a landline, because that was the only way they could get you. So I think it's much harder today for the young. I see my daughters with their children. It's much harder to disconnect because that phone is like an appendage always with you. And so what I would do to try to alleviate the guilt as much as you can, because it never goes away, was to find quality time with them. So I might not have as much as a stay-at-home mom did. And, you know, you always feel bad because all the stay-at-home moms did the Kool-Aid and the cookies and did all that stuff, and you just couldn't. So I would try to make the quality time. And in addition, I would say that you get a strong support network. So a lot of my children's friends were very helpful in helping me get them where they needed to be. And you had to depend on that. My parents were very, very helpful during that time. And my children were all 6 years apart. So the older one got to drive the two younger ones, and then the middle one got to drive the younger one. And then when she went off to college, I was in big time trouble because the driver was gone.
So it went back to you. It did. Any questions out in the audience? I'm just making sure. We have one right over here. And she's bringing you the microphone. Good morning.
Good morning. I have a quick question, kind of for Kate, but for the whole panel. So those skills that get men promoted, the confidence, the assertiveness, the candor and confrontation and handling it, is stuff that gets you labels like the hammer when you're a female. So it's like you see guys doing it, and they're like, woohoo, he's so awesome. And then women do it, and it's like, let's fix her. So did any of you deal with that? And then how did you deal with it, and how did you navigate that?
Okay. You want to tell that story too you told us earlier?
Yes, I'll be happy. That is very, very difficult because you get labeled the B word a lot, and especially by other women. I mean, women, we're our own worst enemies in this because we're always looking for a chink in the armor of another woman so that we can, you know. So I'll tell you a quick funny story, and I hope some of you can relate to this. So we're sitting around a board table, and the president of the bank is sitting there, and he's grilling the women, not the men, okay? Let's make sure we understand that, about the different credits or whatever. It's immaterial. And this one girl, he is just hammering. And I don't know how she is taking it because he was just brutal. And he finally said at the end, which he would have never said to a guy, I want to meet with you tomorrow at 10. And she had the chutzpah to say, do you want me to call you or nudge you?
Do you get what the nudge meant?
And I will tell you that she didn't last much longer after that. But it's very tough. And I think that what we need to do, and I would give this advice to anyone, is we need to have each other's back, and women don't do that. You know, guys do that. Guys are great. I mean, they're great at that. You know, they have their own little network of, they don't even have to talk to each other. They've got it, you know? Sorry for the men in the room. But for us, I think that there's so much competition between females, especially when you're rising through the ranks, that that's the hardest part. So I would say, as advice, is you surround yourself with those that you know have your back, and you depend on them to tell you when you mess up and when you've done well, because you don't always see that yourself.
But wouldn't you also have to agree that you have to have some perception of yourself? Because I joke around, I was in a courtroom, I had a jury trial, it was a female judge, a female defense attorney, and a female me, and my goal was to be the lesser of the three Bs. And it's true because a jury's watching us, and I wanted to make sure I won. And I told the judge later, and I said, you were the first, she was the second, I was the third. But that is, you have to be cognizant, wouldn't you agree? Paula, I mean, y'all, or Kay, both of y'all, you have to be cognizant of how people perceive you.
Absolutely, all the time. I mean, it's probably one of the most important things is to hold yourself strong and believe in yourself. And just like Kay said, what's so important is to surround yourself. So first of all, I say always, so know that your own self is a good person. That's what you have to start with. You have to be the person that you want to be and need to be. And then surround yourself with those same strong women, and because I'll tell you what, this is how I go out in the world and draw strength from that on a regular basis, is knowing, and there are men here too. Mark Bennett, I see you over there. I draw strength from you, but I will just tell you, I've got such a strong group of women in my network, and I get those big hugs every time, and talk about drawing strength from that. It's like that's where you get awesome support.
And are they direct and honest with you if they think they disagree?
Yes, absolutely. I think that sometimes, because I come out and say what I think, and some people, I think in the FedEx time, might have thought that there was no recourse to that. It's like, okay, this is what I think, but I would always, always, always say it's important to me to hear your feedback. In fact, we've got a brand new person. She's sitting over at the Healthy Savannah table now, Tia, and I said, I want to make sure that you tell me anytime that you think I can do something different, that I can improve on something, that I want you to tell me that as well. And she expects that from me, and we expect that from each other.
Any other questions? Or we're just going to keep rolling on here. Yes, ma'am. All the way over here. Good morning. She's from Charleston.
Yes, I am. I have a question for any of you. I was told to succeed that I had to be fearless. Can you describe one of your most fearless moments?
Anybody want to start with that?
Quitting my job. I mean, working in the corporate world, you get really comfortable and used to having a certain amount of security. And I know my mom's here today. I terrified her. And I was terrifying myself, too, by taking that leap and deciding that I needed to do something to find better life balance. And I was stepping into the unknown. We get really used to where we are, even if that little cocoon that we're in is unhealthy. And it's sometimes hard to see that. So for me, the biggest thing was to trust that there was another possibility out there that I didn't even know about, but that could be as good or even better than what I was comfortable in.
Okay.
I think I would say that my whole life, I was told you can do anything you want to do if you make up your mind and you work really hard. I don't know if that's fearless, but I think that that's sort of a personal thing. And I've always found that the people that tended to be the most successful were internally motivated. It had nothing to do with anything external in their life.
Yes, I would say too that you've got to have a lot of self-confidence in yourself and know what it is that you want out of life and actually pursue that and not allow others to sway you away from your goals in life. And that will happen, as was stated earlier. It is sad to say, but there are people out there that work beside you that do not want to see you succeed. And so once you recognize that and you stay focused on what it is that you're trying to achieve, nothing else can stand in your way. And you've just got to have that strong self-confidence within yourself.
What was your scariest moment where you had to be really brave?
Oh, wow. That's a lot of them. Lots and lots. All right, so there's a couple of stories I could tell here, but I think the one that I really want to tell, and it is very serious, as you can tell from my voice, so it's coming right here from the heart, but I grew up, my dad was very abusive mentally and physically to my mom. I have 6 brothers and sisters, and we grew up way out in the country, as you know, and so that time growing up was hard, but kind of for survival purposes, I didn't say anything, and I regret to say that I actually was kind of tried to be my dad's best friend, because I think I felt like that same thing was going to happen to me if I didn't do what I should do. Well, the hardest thing I ever did was figuring out, with the help of some good friends, that he was mentally ill and not a good person, But here's the cool thing. There's a good story that ends up here, is because many of you know that I bring my mom here from Missouri for 1 week every year, and we just go have a blast. And my relationship with my mother would have never, ever happened if I hadn't had this hard thing that was in my life, and I just have the best relationship. I love my mother. She has never not loved me. And so learning that love from my mom has been really, so switching and understanding that good always outweighs evil in every situation.
So, kind of piggybacking on that, and I appreciate it because that came from the heart. How do you forgive? How do you go inside yourself to forgive? Because I think sometimes you have to do that to move past. Would you agree?
Yes, I would. And that's a hard thing to do. But at the same time, I have to take care of myself, and so I just made the commitment to stay. And if my dad had ever changed, I would have gone. And he has passed away a few years ago now, but I just couldn't go back because the draw was so strong. I couldn't be in his life, and so I just had to make that decision myself to take care of me, to do that. But do I forgive him? Absolutely, I did, and I think that that's an important thing to do, because you can't grow, you can't grow stronger, you can't do any of that if you don't, and you must forgive, because wherever that evil came from, you don't know, but forgiving is an important part of being successful, I think, in any part of, whether you're a stay-at-home mom or you're a bank president, whatever you're doing, it's so important.
Okay, thank you. Any questions? Yes, ma'am. There's one over here. They're bringing you the microphone. It's so quiet in here.
It's just an honor to be here today. I'm just so blessed to listen to everyone on stage and be amongst everyone in the room. This is for the panel. In one word, could you give us your secret strength?
One word.
My one word would be God.
Mine would be faith.
Meditation.
No, we wouldn't know that one, would we?
Faith.
Okay. Thank you. So one of the questions that was asked is, how you overcome your fear. How would you take what you have learned and how do you give it back into the community? Because I know with each one of you, it's not just that you've thrived at a business or thrived in a career, but that you've given back. Why do you do it, and what would you tell these women?
Well, I would say that mine really starts back at the roots. I was born and raised in Garden City, and Garden City had no property taxes, and everything was done by volunteerism. So it wasn't a matter of will you show up, it was a matter of what time do I need to be there. And that was what I witnessed my entire growing up years. And I don't know anything any different than being passionate about caring about each of you in your own way, and how I can do something that sounds Pollyannish, but what can I do to help touch the lives of the folks in our community and help to make it better? And somebody has to do it. You can't sit back and say, oh, well, I'll let so-and-so. Because if we all sat back and did that, absolutely nothing would ever happen.
So what's your passion? Where do you like to volunteer? Because we mentioned that the other day.
Education is a big thing for me. I've always been very, very passionate about that. But I'm willing to help in any way that I can.
Now, you were telling me that when education, so obviously organizations, nonprofit, they need these people. And so where do they always seem to stick you?
Oh, they always stick me on the finance committee. And, I'm sorry, but that is just boring, boring, boring. So I'm on this one board that that's all they ever had me do. So when I took my short retirement, I told them I wanted to get more involved. So I started going out and reading to pre-K centers and the lottery-funded pre-K centers, and it was just absolutely amazing. I don't think anything has ever touched my heart more than the time that I spent with those children. And I came back and I told them, I don't want to be on the finance committee anymore. I want to do something fun.
Good, good. Paula, I'm just going to go right down the line.
Okay, so I've divided my time among a lot of different organizations, but as most of you know, Healthy Savannah really has my passion and my heart, because I truly believe that if we are healthy, if we are active, we eat good food, we then lessen the burden on so many of the other organizations at the end of the day. Many of the chronic disease, I mean, I've been a big player with American Diabetes Association, chair of the board, fundraising, wound care clinic, walk team, the whole 9 yards when I was in New Orleans with FedEx. The No AIDS Task Force got a big chunk of my time. It was, I learned, I didn't even know anybody with HIV or AIDS when I started volunteering there, and it just, I mean, talk about a place to, you know, to put your heart. But if we can all be healthier, then we can avoid a lot of things that happen at the end of the day. So I don't know what else to say other than to say I just, you know, I think that if we just, Healthy Savannah can help, if we do that, or if that social movement moves forward, then we can lessen all the need. And I would seriously, I would give every dime I have and every ounce of time I have to probably every nonprofit represented here in the room, because I just, you know, care about every one of the programs that come out of all of these, you know, y'all are just doing some really phenomenal work. So
we definitely see where your heart is.
yes.
Kate?
So for me, the most rewarding thing that I do is to be of service to others. And that, I mean, that shows up in teaching yoga, but in everything, when I'm giving to somebody else, I get out of my own way and I get out of my own story of whatever I'm dealing with, and I'm really in that moment of being for somebody else. Specifically, the demographic that I love is old people. I teach a class at the Senior Center on Bull Street every Tuesday. I've been doing it for like 6 or 7 years. And I started it out as a 6-week program, and I never stopped. The people that come and do this chair yoga class are doing yoga for all the right reasons. They're doing it so they can tie their own shoes. They're doing it so they can play with their grandchildren. They're doing it so that they can breathe well, like really powerful things. And Hospice Savannah is another really important organization to me. I've had family members there, and we do a lot of work with them through our community at Savannah Power Yoga as well.
That's wonderful. That's wonderful. Chief, can we ask you that?
Yes. And so for me, I really don't think there's any greater feeling anywhere than to give to others. To see the joy in someone's face when you have helped them in any particular type of way is just very rewarding, not only for you, but for that person as well. And so for the last 35 years of my life, essentially, that's what I've done in my profession, giving back to the community. And I think it's just very, very important. And I also believe that that's the reason that we are here, to help one another. That's one of the commandments, if you must, to love one another as you would love yourself. And so we have to constantly look out for each other if we want this universe to continue.
Chief, I'm going to go back to you. We've had this community with law enforcement, we've been hit pretty hard, you would agree. How do you think, and we had this, and I think it goes to maybe women entering into a field and you're almost changing the perception. How do you think you as a law enforcement, as a female, going into a community and changing? Because we've seen across the United States that there's been a lot of animosity between law enforcement and the citizens who live in that community.
And it has, and I will say, I would like to remind everyone that this is nothing new. This is a national systemic issue with law enforcement. And I will tell you that it dates back decades. What we just witnessed across this country, and particularly Ferguson and Baltimore, is really just a breaking point. Police officers all across the country have been challenged with having good relationships with the people that they represent in each and every community. And so it is a struggle. Right now, also across the country, you have the International Association of Chiefs of Police, you have the Police Executive Forum, the National Organization for Black Law Enforcement, and all the executive organizations coming together across the country to figure out how to resolve this issue between police and communities to rebuild trust. And right here on a local front, we are doing everything that we can do as well to try to bridge that gap. We are very much so challenged because of the last several years, of course, with some of the issues that we've been confronted with within the PD. And so we have to work extra hard to prove ourselves, and the way to do that is to demonstrate to members of this community that we do care about them and that they can trust us, but it's got to be demonstrated through our actions and not just by words. We've got to be very transparent in what we do, and it's not just here again in this community, but all across the country. And so it's going to take time for us to rebuild the relationship, but I really believe that it can be done, but it can't be done without the support of the members of the community.
So you can see why Chief Lumpkin will not allow her to retire. Thank you very much. We are here to answer more questions. If you have them, you can go on Facebook and post your questions. We will answer them, but thank you all so very much.
My name is Lynette Williams, and I'm from Savannah, Georgia. I was working, and I lost my job. I just had a new grandson. This is my very first grandson, and he was like a couple of months old at the time. And I was actually over visiting him, and I noticed that he only had 2 Pampers. And so I couldn't think of anywhere to go because I didn't have any money to get him any Pampers with. So I called the United Way and let them know what was going on with me. And they asked me to come by, and they would be able to see if they could help me. It meant more to me than anything in the world, the Pampers that they gave us. The young lady even told me that they would help me with my job search with gas. It made a great difference in my life. I would advise others to call the United Way 211 line so that they'll be able to get assistance with everything. It's not just Pampers, but it's just the fact of something as small as helping with Pampers is not too important for the United Way. This W is more than a letter. It helps you and your family.
My name is Elizabeth Hall. I'm from Springfield, Georgia. I was going through a bad divorce, and I got 4 children. I came in hard times. I never had to work because he was always a caregiver for us. I lost my home. I lost everything. I was wanting to get a job, and I called eConnect and was introduced to Miss Bradshaw. I felt very uncomfortable asking her, but she made me feel like I was doing the right thing because she always had a smile on her face. The first time they gave me gas cards, I was needing transportation to go to the interview. The cards they gave me was a way out. eConnect has helped me through so much. The help they gave me was an awesome experience. I would recommend anybody to this program. This W is more than a letter. It gave me and my family a fresh start.
My name is Juliet Donald, and I'm from Midway, Georgia. My retinas were damaged after my birth, and so I have 20/400 in both eyes, so they consider me legally blind. It put me into a real depression after I had my eye surgery. I didn't really want to leave my apartment. I got to enroll at the Center for the Blind and Low Vision, and they are just so wonderful. So wonderful. I'd like to thank the United Way for helping to pay my transportation to get back and forth, because in Midway there are no buses. It's a life changer, very much so. I can get out and network with other people who are vision impaired, such as myself, and we can continue on looking for careers and jobs.
This W is more than a letter. It changes lives.